rapid release, which was kind of just really starting to get talked about when I disconnected from a lot of that stuff, was much more talked about. And with AI in the mix, rapid release had gotten rapider. So it felt very overwhelming in a sense of like, well, I've actually moved away from some of that left-brained approach to publishing. And so to see that it had ramped up and I was moving the other direction made me go, do I really want to be part of this anymore? Like, I just want to write books. I write for the love of it. This is something that is a passion of mine. And I know that's true of a lot of writers.
Hello, fellow creative voyagers. This week on the Indy Author podcast, I talk with Johnny B. Truant about the Artisan Author, including the importance of creating genuine one-on-one connections with readers rather than succumbing to the rapid release model and algorithm-driven strategies dominating the publishing world. Johnny highlights the importance of authentic interactions, pricing books appropriately, and understanding the unique value each author brings. The conversation also delves into the growing support for niche and artisanal creators among readers. Johnny talks about his book, The Artisan Author, and his upcoming Kickstarter campaign. And now let's hear from Johnny B. Truant about the Artisan Author. Hello, and welcome to the Indy Author podcast. Today, my guest is Johnny B. Truant. Hey, Johnny, how are you doing?
Hey, Maddie, good to be back. I feel like I'm getting some regular status now, which is nice.
Yes, you are. You're going to be right up there with the Mark LaFace and the Michael Arons of the Indy Author backlist. I can't compete with
those guys. Can't do it.
And just before we started recording, I mentioned to you that one of my policies for repeat guests is rather than reading their bio one more time, I am inviting them to share a piece of information about themselves that the listeners might not know. And in fact, you have a piece of information about yourself that I myself didn't know until just about 3 minutes ago. So
I didn't know it myself until about an hour and a half ago. Yeah, I didn't know it until recently. It was a discovery. I don't know how exciting this is for anybody, but I just had my first hit and run. Not me. It was somebody else. I was in a Home Depot parking lot and I came out and like some dude had run into my car like 2 minutes earlier. And there were these ladies who had pictures of his license plate and everything. They're like, yeah, he just ran away. So yeah, there you go. Johnny in a hit and run.
That sounds like fodder for a book as soon as the dust settles on that event.
Oh, that dude's going to get his literary revenge somehow, I'm sure.
Well, I do like to mention that you have been a guest on 2 past episodes. In episode 286, we talked about the new normal of an author career. And in episode 239, we talked about moving the needle to a different track. And if people want to find those episodes, they can go to the indieauthor.com/episodes-all and search for Johnny's name. And in both those episodes, I think in one way or the other, we sort of talked about the concept that you're getting very well known for, which is the artisan author. Mm-hmm. But we decided we wanted to have an episode that was focused strictly on the concept of the artisan author. And I thought it would be great to ask you to describe what were you seeing in the author community that made you feel like a discussion of the artisan author was necessary?
Well, so I'll give the short version of this little story that I tell about the genesis of the idea. And by the way, I'm not inventing this. Like it's not something that's inventable. It's like saying you invented breathing or something. Because, Joanna Penn talks a bunch about it and other people do. But this idea of being an artisan author, just the spoiler is that it's a more personal one-on-one connection rather than the mass action, stoke the Amazon algorithms, rapid release sort of thing a lot of people do. So the story that I tell is that in 2023, I went to the last 20 books, and I hadn't been to a conference in quite a while. And I had just been kind of in my writer's cave and hadn't gone out. And when I got into that environment, it was like very cool to be back in it, to be around people again, but also kind of, whoa, it's like when you see a kid every day and then you don't see them for 6 months and they got really big. And so I kind of was like, well, whoa, this is weird. Like the industry has changed so much, and the rapid release, which was kind of just really starting to get talked about when I disconnected from a lot of that stuff, was much more talked about. And with AI in the mix, rapid release had gotten rapider. So it felt very overwhelming in a sense of like, well, I've actually moved away from some of that left-brained approach to publishing. And so to see that it had ramped up and I was moving the other direction made me go, do I really want to be part of this anymore? Like, I just want to write books. I write for the love of it. This is something that is a passion of mine. And I know that's true of a lot of writers. And I think that that's what really hit me, was talking to other people that time, like people who were new authors or people who were old guard who had been at it for a while, and feeling this kind of, oh, well, this is no longer something that people can get into out of love, because it's just, you have to, get all your metadata exactly right. And you need to publish a book every 3 or 4 weeks. And you need to don't take a vacation and don't publish your first book until you have 7 of them so that you can rapid fire them. And it all felt very impersonal to me, which isn't my vibe. I get that some people that's cool and that's fine and great for them if it is, but it's not for me. And it isn't for a lot of the people I talk to. So in 2024, after thinking about that, I came back to the first Author Nation conference and gave a presentation on what I'm calling the Artisan Author, which is, we'll talk about that. But basically, it's the opposite of rapid release in many ways. For people who don't want to publish rapid fire and don't like the disconnection that tends to happen between writers and readers in that, and that focus on quantity at the expense of anything else sometimes. And what I think is a lot of myopic thinking. And I gave that presentation and it just really hit. Like, people were coming up for the rest of the conference and they were saying, thank you for that. That's something that I didn't know. I had an alternative and I came to this and I haven't published yet, but oh my gosh, I'm not sure I want to publish now, seeing what it takes. And that was when I decided to write the book, was after getting that reception and so many people saying, this gives me hope that I can just write for love. And maybe I won't be a bazillionaire, but at least I can get a side hustle. And at least there's a place for me in this writing world in a way that I don't think rapid release allows.
Yeah, I was at that 2024 Author Nation presentation and it was excellent.
Thank you.
I think that there was an audience there of people who hadn't heard that message before and were grateful for hearing it, and a group of people who had sort of heard that message before and needed to be reminded about it. It's the kind of thing that I think you always need to return to and just remind yourself and check in about it. And
when I wanted to put some meat behind it, because the idea of saying, okay, well, I'm an artist, which, the root of artisan basically is, that's not new at all. I'm just going to be an artist. I'm going to write. But then we're kind of like, yeah, but can I please make some dollars at it? Right? Like, it's cool to be, I know how to do that. I know how to write a book, print one copy and stick it on my shelf and never make any money. I think we all know how that's a possibility. But the idea of being able to have at least, a sort of a part-time side hustle income or a full-time income, or if you really hustle at it and you're lucky and the stars align, then you can do super well at it. And that was the piece that I wanted to try and put in. Like, what is the business model and the economics of this way of working, rather than just art versus commerce, and neither the twain shall meet.
Yeah. Do you think that it's particularly important in 2025 to be getting that message out? I think that I'm going to speculate that in part it is because, although I personally, not on an industry level, but I personally have been hearing less about rapid release because I removed myself from that environment because I realized it wasn't right for me. But my own experience is that discussion has moved from rapid release by actual human beings to rapid release by AI. And I kind of feel like the AI is the elephant in the room, that maybe a conversation about that, we can get out of the way and then focus on actual human beings.
Yeah, for sure. I think that AI is exacerbating it. Now, I am not anti-AI. I really like playing with AI imagery. I love having it help me analyze vast things. Like, if you run a whole book through it and you're like, can you please tell me if this character is dead because I can't remember and I haven't read it in 6 years?
Yeah.
That sort of thing. And you know what? People use AI to write books, and I don't even have a problem with that. But it's not for me. And I think it's kind of a different kind of writing. It almost feels to me like if you're all in with AI writing. Now, I don't want to generalize and I don't want to cast aspersions and I don't want to be judgmental, but I think that with various, small caveats, I think that if you're all in with that, it's a little bit more like arbitrage and solving a logic puzzle to me than it is what I think a lot of us think of as writing, like what we came into it for. And I think it's polarized a lot. So in other words, the rapid release and what I'm calling the artisan author approach, I think there was a lot more gray area between. And for the readers too, like I'll read some of that, I'll read some of that. And rapid release, by the way, tends to overlap non-exclusively with Kindle Unlimited. I want to be careful about that. They're not the same thing, and you can be an artisan author in Kindle Unlimited. But we did start to see a lot of that. And then now it's like, no, that it's its own thing. Like it's its own distinct thing. If you're rapid release, ebooks only, largely Amazon only, because it's usually with Kindle Unlimited, that has become its own thing so completely that this artisan approach, I think, has new life because there's no longer any ambiguity. It's kind of like, do I want Do I want X or do I want Y? Because there's kind of no middle in that anymore. So I like this because the artisan readers are becoming more artisan readers. Like they were willing to kind of straddle both before, but I think now it's like the person who wants something that feels handmade. And I'm using that a little loosely, handmade, because they're books and we aren't making them by hand. But that person has gone more toward wanting individual. This is the person who buys vinyl records, who shops at farmers markets to get their eggs and their produce, who want a direct connection, and the person who'd rather buy artisan jewelry at an artisan market than go to Zales or something. You know, that's what I'm seeing. That's what my experience is.
Yeah, it's interesting. I just saw in Publishers Weekly, they had an article about a slight downturn in print book sales, but they were calling out Rebecca Yarros's Onyx Storm and the fact that she has sold a lot of print copies, but she sold like 3 times as many special edition print copies as she has regular print copies. And I thought that was interesting just because it's speaking to that, the artisan side of
Totally.
Even, you know, the print world.
Yeah, I mean, and and maybe I'm jumping the gun on this, but the magic of this to me is so just to be clear, rapid release is based largely on algorithmic thinking, meaning that if you can hit those algorithms just right, if just the right keywords, you have a book following another book that's very similar and hits the same readership, and you advertise it the same, and you do the things that make the machines happy, you can make a buttload of money. I still think even today, although I feel like it's going to collapse. I feel like rapid release is breathing its last breaths personally. But that's algorithmic thinking. And then the other side, what makes the artisan approach work is 1,000 true fans. And if people don't know that concept, it was coined by Wired editor Kevin Kelly. And it basically says that for an artist, you need 1,000 true fans, people who are ride or die, get the tattoo, they want everything that you have. If you have 1,000 of those people, you can make a full-time, in theory, 6-figure living. Because if you can sell 1,000 people $100 worth of stuff a year, that's $100,000. And what I love how accessible that is. Like finding 1,000 people who really love what you do, I can picture that. Like my high school had about 1,000 people. I can imagine what they look like in the gym. It's not this nebulous like, oh, just smoke and mirrors and magic and, you know, Amazon's changing it all the time. It's my connection to an individual person that I found, that I met, in my case, a lot of times in person. There's nothing, that's accessible. I can do that. I can sell special editions. I can sell whatever, because I only have to sell it to 1,000 people or 100 people or 10 people or whatever your metric is.
Yeah, I think that the tricky part is that in theory, you know, you and I are talking, it totally makes sense. I'm picturing the 1,000 people in the high school gym. But I think that then when the author goes home and they're trying to take the steps they need to take to understand and cater to their 1,000 fans, it becomes much trickier. Like, how do you figure out who they are? How do you figure out if your picture of the 1,000 people in the gym overlaps with who those 1,000 people actually are? Where are they? What appeals to them? If somebody is just hearing this concept for the first time and they're thinking, oh, how does this apply to my own books? Do you have advice about how they step through that mental exercise to figure that out?
Sure. I have it's a little bit of a cop-out answer, but I think it's fair. And I think that a lot of the answers that people give when asked these sorts of things when they're in authority is they don't want to give an answer that feels fair. They want to give an answer that feels sensational or feels decisive. So I'm comfortable with my cop-out answer. And the answer is this, so I just wrote the Artisan Author book, and I had to think through all this, and my default was to give you my ways. My default was to say, okay, here's how I find people. But there's no one answer. There's no one size fits all. And as much as I have a problem with a lot of the tenets of rapid release, the real thing that bothers me about it is how it tends to be presented, if not overtly, covertly, as if it's one size fits all. Is if this is the way you self-publish. And so I can't give you the way any more than rapid release can give you the way. So there's a lot of like, it depends on your personality and your strengths. So with all of that said, it's the things that work are beautifully simple. And that's what I love about it. Like I think it's more about unlearning than learning. So if you think about it, you wrote a book. You need to find a reader who likes that book. And then you need to sell it to them for a fair price, not 99 cents. You need to sell it to them for the price that that book is worth. And so that's what's in common. The writer, the reader, and the fact that there's a fair exchange of value. And it's not just like, will you please deign to read my book? And there are obvious exceptions to all this. So in my case, I think in the artisan case, okay, let me give this is going to freak a lot of people out, I think. The best artisan strategies, in my opinion, in my experience, and I'm not exhaustive on all this, they involve some degree of being public, being real. And I don't mean that means you need to go on and you need to speak on stage at conferences. It doesn't mean you need to sell books live, although I really like doing that. What it means is that because it is a personal connection, true fans don't bond with an avatar or an image on your website or an email autoresponder or a form email. Like they don't bond with that. You're looking for a strong connection to these people, and that requires you to be available. So what I do, let me give you what I do, and then let me give you an example of what I think other people can do. But they all involve some degree of like being yourself, being out there, forming genuine connections, one at a time, by the way. There's very hard to leverage this. So what I love to do is I love to sell books in person. This is a new fascination, but I am just head over heels. I'm half extrovert. So I really like going out and meeting people. And I can go into that more if you want. But a lot of people are not suited for that. And that's fine. You shouldn't copy my advice unless you are exactly me, right? Like, don't follow what I say unless you are exactly me in my shoes, with my catalog, with my readers, with my history, with my experience, all that stuff. So that's live events is the way that I really actualize that. But the one that I think that's kind of the most sweeping, and it's a really good example while not being very sexy at all, is if all you do is let the people around you know that you're a writer, and kind of like with pride. Because a lot of people, like, they aren't proud about it, or they're kind of like, oh, I'm a writer, and people pat you on the head and say, good for you, that you special little person with your dreams. But just like, it's my business. This is what I do. And I don't sell to any of the people that I know in person. Like my friends and stuff that I hang out with, I don't sell to them. That feels creepy to be like, hey, I got a new book out. You want to buy it? But they all know that I'm a writer, and they know that I like to talk about my stories, that they will ask questions. How does that work? How did you get started? And I like to talk about it. So if you can do that, what tends to happen is you become interesting to them, which means they like to introduce you. They like to talk about you. There's a certain amount of social cachet for a person who's not you, somebody else, if they can say, I know a writer. Like, we're interesting people. We don't give ourselves credit for that, but we're magical to a lot of people. So if they can say, like, the number of times I've been introduced to somebody new and they'll say, oh, you're the writer. It's like my reputation precedes me because I'm not shy about it. And I'm not a huckster, like, just to be clear. And so what will happen is I was at just a gathering of like high school volleyball parents, because my daughter plays volleyball and we hang out, and it came up again. And one of them was like, hey, there's this whole, named an event, really expensive, exclusive event with a lot of people with a lot of money. Do you know about this? No, I didn't know about that. Okay, well, let me tell you who to contact about it. I know somebody. Or there was somebody else who got me a free table at something. I didn't ask for that. Or when I sold at an event recently, a bunch of people who knew that I was a writer, but I never tried to sell to them, came out to buy books and brought their friends. So that's just one example. Like, that's not the end all be all, but it always boils down to how can you most authentically be your interesting authorly self and form genuine connections with people that aren't based on artifice, that aren't based on you trying to act more awesome than you are, that aren't based on you being a wilting flower, like, oh yeah, I wrote a book and I'm sorry about it. You know, like, those are the things that matter. But it's not sexy because it's so common sense. Yeah. And it's not sexy because it's not leverageable. You can't say, get me 100 true fans tomorrow. You have to build them one at a time. If you just talk to people and then, oh, hey, so-and-so's an author, I might like to check out one of their books. They get to know you. That's the thing, is this, what I'm calling the artisan reader. They want a book, but what they really want is a connection to you as the author, which is why you need to be available, which is why you can't hide behind your computer. And I mean, there are ways you can do it. If you're an extreme introvert and that just freaks you out, you can do it with your email. You can do it with your social media. Like, it's about being as maximally human as you can. whatever jives with your personality and their personality and kind of the brand of the connection that you have had, which, by the way, should be authentic. Don't cultivate a fake brand. That's crap. But if that happens, you're basically, you know what, I'll say it this way. You're creating little friendships. And so I think in terms of 1,000 true fans, I think of 1,000 of that specific kind of friend. Because the people that I get who come back, the people who have been with me for a long time, the people who like what I do, I try to interact with them like friends. And it's cool for, I don't mean to sound conceited about it. It's cool for people if they like reading you and you're like cool to them and you're like a friend, then that's exciting to a lot of readers. And so that would be my advice. My advice is so dumb because my advice is like, be human, be nice to people, don't start internet slap fights, write good books, sell them at real prices. Like they're the dumbest advice. But that's in my mind, it's been obfuscated by layer upon layer of garbage, honestly.
What popped into my head as you were talking about the connections and friendships, thinking of it as a friendship, is that by far the most popular posts that I post on Facebook for my fiction platform are my weekly post that says, here's what I'm reading, what are you reading? And I always get a bunch of comments on that. And I used to try to comment on all of them, which was time consuming because I had to research every book because I didn't want to accidentally say like, that's great. And then find out it was some odious book that I didn't want to appear to be behind. And so I eventually backed off from actually commenting on them unless somebody just happened to like post a book that I really liked or I knew the author or whatever that might be. But I realized that time spent having those interactions about those, like it probably pays me off. Like I could drop out a couple of more generic posts from my newsletter schedule and instead spend the time to be researching every book that people say that they're reading.
Yeah, it just depends on your individual setup. I mean, I spend inordinate amount of time in email, and I said this in the presentation, and I said it in the book. It's almost insulting to me how much it seems like how few authors seem to answer their actual email from readers. And I don't have stats on this or anything like that, but all I know is that if I answer an email from a reader who's new, who's never interacted with me, 9 times out of 10, they are shocked. They're like, oh my God, I can't believe you responded. And I'm like, of course I responded. You sent me an email. But I know from sending email to other people that a lot of people just don't respond to email in general. And I can only conclude that other authors aren't answering their email. So what you just described about taking the extra time, I mean, I can't say if it's worth it for you, only you can make that judgment. But I know for me that if so if somebody sends me an involved email, I don't just say, that's great, send. I don't do that. I'll take 15, 20 minutes sometimes, depending on the email, to answer it. And there's a real temptation to be like, man, I could just put an autoresponder on that. It's fine. I could just say, thanks, great. Like I could respond, but briefly. But the way I look at it is if I'm going to spend time learning and refining ads, or writing a sales email that's blind, or creating a promo, like those are things that take time and effort and sometimes money. Why would I not put it with my warmest leads? So I'll give you an example. So this isn't email, but it came through email. So I sold, this was at just like a little local artisan fair. I probably made $300 that day, which is not that great. But I sold a book to this one guy. His name was Greg. And after a while, Greg emailed me and he said, hey, really loved that book. Do you have the sequels? I gave it to my buddy. He loves it too. He's read the first, few in the series. And are you going to have them? And I said, well, what? I'll come down and meet you. And they together, between the two of them, of various series, whatever, they ended up talking themselves into 19 books. 19. And that was because he sent an email and I bantered back and forth a few times, just like friends. And then I drove down on my own time, my own dime, to Book People, the bookstore here in Austin, and they gave me about $400. So okay. And they're fans for life. Those people are fans for life. And I have a lot of those people where if you make the little bit of extra effort to either communicate and be real with them, to open up and be human with them, to go out of your way or make an exception and sign a book when you don't normally sign books, that sort of thing, they'll remember it. They'll remember that you made an exception.
Yeah, an example where I think I did make the right choice is that periodically I want to poll followers of the Indy Author podcast about, like, do you want more business stuff? Do you want more craft stuff? Like, who do you want to hear from again? That kind of thing. And so I was working on a little like Survey Monkey survey that I could send out to them. And I finally thought, well, no, I'm just gonna have them let me know. So I sent out an email through my email service provider, and then when people respond, it goes to my actual personal email. And I said, like, here's a list of guests who have been on the podcast more than once. Who do you want to hear from again? And I got these, several people responded. And just like you're saying, we're excited that, like, I responded back. And then also I could ask them follow-up questions, and then they felt more invested in what the answer, what the interaction was going to result in. So.
And they all said Johnny B. Truant.
Yes, they all said Johnny.
Yeah, I think that you can make if you're not watching a video, I'm making air quotes, you can make unwise and wasteful time investments. I'm putting that in quotes because I don't think these are wasteful or unwise at all. To do something that is low leverage like that, right? Like responding to emails one at a time, and you're going to get a ton. And by the way, all the people who sent it to you, they knew you were going to get a ton. So when they get a reply, they're like, oh my God, you replied. It's funny about surveys. I think this is telling too. I've sent out a survey to my list once or twice, but I did it differently than you did it. I did do a survey platform of some sort. And the results of the survey are largely irrelevant. What was relevant was that there were a handful of people who emailed me back and said whatever they were going to say. And then they said, and by the way, thank you for asking, because it shows that you actually care what we think.
Yeah.
Which again says that to me implies there are other people in their lives that clearly don't care what they think, or that's the impression. So when you as an author can stand out like that, you move up a notch. I believe in nurturing your warmest leads until they're hot leads. I would rather do that than sift through a billion super cold leads to try and find a few people who might buy a book once.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. One of the things that struck me as I was thinking through, this interview ahead of time is that I feel like, and I'm willing to be talked out of this, but I feel like forming those kind of relationships is easiest if what you have to offer is unusual and not center of genre. So, for example, you've written a book called Fat Vampire. And so there are not like a zillion books out there about fat vampires. If people are attracted to that, then you have an instant fan for life because, they feel simpatico with you in a way they don't with other authors. First of all, do you think that's true? And second of all, if it is, do you have different advice for people who are writing more center of a genre type work?
Make sure you circle back with the second part, because I'm going to forget it, because I'm going to take you on a little tour here. Yes, I 100% believe that. As a matter of fact, so in the effort to give this knowledge some structure, I have 6 pillars of artisan authordom that I wrote about. And one of them is be yourself. It's the last one, and therefore the hammer, the most important. And the idea, if I could, just a very small philosophical tangent, I think that what we call normal in our world is the perception of a handful of people who've controlled media historically. Now, I don't mean that in a conspiracy theory way. I just mean that there are a relatively small number of people who have the means to make movies, to make TV, to make big blockbuster books in the past. And that small percentage has been overwhelmingly represented. And we have just, by happenstance, rather than conspiracy in a lot of cases, just received that version of what it is to be real. And so the example I like to give is, if you didn't know any better and you didn't know anything about the United States, you would think that like half the United States is California, because a lot of movies, a disproportionate number of movies and TV shows are set, not shot, but set in California, because that's where those people live. Those are the restaurants they go to. Those are the friends they hang out with. That's the nightclub and the cultures that they're part of. The mother of the character is just like their mother. Like, we write what's around us, and it's nobody's fault, but it's what it is. And so because of that, what we've been calling normal, we've conflated with majority, because if it's normal, it must be the majority, but it's not actually true. The most typical thing you can be is atypical. Like the abnormal, the people outside of what we consider to be normal, are the majority. It's most people are abnormal. They're just abnormal in different ways. So the reason I say all of this is because there are a bunch of people who have not been served. If you are something that is outside of those typical 9 dots, you haven't seen media, stories, and everything that represent you. And so when they see it, if you're brave enough to be yourself, to stand up and to wait, if you have a freak flag to fly, like I'm not very freaky, unfortunately. If I were, I'd do better in a niche, but I don't. Then people will be like, oh my God, that's exactly what I've been waiting for. And I haven't seen it before now. So my favorite example of this is Chuck Tingle. Do you happen to know Chuck Tingle?
I don't.
Okay. So do yourself a huge favor and Google Chuck Tingle books. And they're like, I wish I could read you the titles, but like they're gay erotica and the titles sound like it, right? So, but they're really funny. There's like sentient bubblegum that's also a landscape architect, and it's like some weird crap. It's really funny. And his covers are terrible. It looks like he just took stock photos and cut them out with scissors and stuck a velociraptor head on a guy in the background. They're terrible. Or there's like a game playing die in one of them, and it's sentient, and so it's got a face behind it. It's so stupid looking.
They are very bad.
They're terrible. And so I'm walking through a bookstore the other day. It was like Barnes and Noble. It was a big one. And there's this book called Bury Your Gaze by Chuck Tingle. And I'm like, this can't be the same guy. Like, it was a pro cover. It's got great reviews. I think it might be a New York Times bestseller. It's been very prominently featured. And he's got another one called, I think, Lucky Day, and another one, he's got a third that's right in that milieu that I feel like are traditional big picture things. And so I couldn't believe it. And I looked it up. And like, he's got great online buzz, and the New York Times is writing about him. Mr. Tingle understands whatever. So, but then I think he's still writing his ridiculous, like crazy ones. So my point of telling this story is that there's a guy who I never would have thought would have mainstream, like would have big success in that way. And I'm defining success as being in a bookstore. I don't know how much money he's making, but that happened because that is so niche and so crazy and so freak flag that the people who love it, they don't just like it. They're like, oh my God, this is the thing I've been waiting for my entire life.
Yeah.
So that is all to say that, yes, I could not agree with you more. I think that if you're right down here, watch me answer the second one without even needing the prompt. I think if you're right down the center, I think you're fine, but you need to rely more on you and your unique personality, which doesn't mean it needs to be freaky or abnormal or anything like that. It just means that, so like me, I mean, I'm a straight white cis guy who's 49 years old, and like I live in a middle class neighborhood. Like, there's nothing freaky or different about me except internally. And so I have to bring a lot of personality. I have to be likable and I'm not saying other people don't have to be likable, but like, I don't have any of those shortcuts to like, you are my people that a lot of other people do. But if you're writing right down the center of genre, so let's say you just write dead straight, like Lee Child style thrillers, and just to exaggerate the example, then maybe they're the kind of books that could have been written with AI, right? Let's just really nail that down. I think you can still promote those in an artisan fashion if you are doing the artisan things. Because again, that reader wants a bond with you, not just the book. So when I sell in person, this is a strange phenomenon, and it's at least a little bit unique to me, but it's like they're sold before they pick a book. So they come over because they were attracted by the covers, but then we talk, and it's like, there's almost this like, well, which one should I get? And then I'll say, well, what if you get that one? And they'll just kind of go, okay, sold. And I'm like, do you want to read the back? Do you want to know anything about, do you want to know the price? Like, I never tell people prices, but it's because they've formed that connection with me as the author, which you can do in person, you can do on email, you can do on a social media, you can do it on a podcast. And, like your listeners, they know Matty, right? Like you are you. So I don't think it matters as much what you write. Like if you're a rapid release Kindle Unlimited author, then what you write is all that matters. Like it's the sun, moon, and the stars. Like you have to write exactly the thing that hits those algorithms if you're not doing other stuff. But with us, with artisan authors, it matters much less. Like, yes, you need to deliver a good book and a good experience. They're not going to buy a second book if they don't like the first one, that sort of thing. But I don't think it matters as much that you nail it right away with some crazy book or anything like that.
I wanted to take off on what you were saying about you haven't even told them the price when they decide to buy the book. And you had said earlier about the pitfalls of, undervaluing one's own work. So can you talk about that a little bit? How do people get over that, oh, my book is only worth 99 cents, and bring a more healthy mindset to the monetary value that they're offering their readers?
Yeah. So first of all, it's my instinct to kind of like be a wise ass about that and be like, well, just take some value in yourself. But I'm trying not to do that because it's been beaten into us. And I understand that a lot of people, if they don't make this paradigm flip, if you don't really truly understand that you need to be looking from 1,000 true fans perspective rather than an algorithm perspective, then you are rightly going to conclude that if I price my book too high, people won't buy it. That is correct if you don't shift the paradigm, if you don't start operating and thinking differently. But with that said, our words are worth something. So the best way that I can think to, and maybe I'm just trying to convince you, maybe that's what I'm doing. So I've seen these discussions that like the one social media I'll allow myself a little tiny bit is Reddit. And I'll go on Reddit and I'll see somebody talking about, well, I can't make money on Ingram books. So if this is a little inside baseball, but if Ingram is what sells to bookstores and libraries, and they require typically a 55% discount. And the way that math works out is if you make $3 on a book that you sold to a bookstore through Ingram, you're doing good, $3. But you have to price reasonably high to even get that. And people are like, I'm making 6 cents on my book, or I'm losing money on my book. And I'm like, hey, price higher. But the resistance comes and it's like, well, I can't price higher because the book only costs me this much to buy. And, because your author copy costs $6 or something like that. And I'm like, stop right there. Just stop. I'm making the timeout symbol. Stop right there. Because what you're doing in that example is you are saying, well, I bought a ream of paper and there's 500 pages and that ream of paper cost me $6. So I better not resell it for more than like $9 because otherwise it's just greedy. There's your words on those pages. Like they're not blank paper. So the fact that they are buying a story has value. So that's just a mental shift of like, kind of hike up your pants and say, I'm sorry, like I put my heart and soul into this. You know how long it took me to write this book? Actually, one of the guys who bought 19 books said something like that. I joked, that was the easiest $400 I ever made. And he said, well, except for the year that you spent writing them.
Oh, wow.
So that sort of thing it's a mental shift. And I think that you have to really get that it's possible. So you can make that mental shift, which I just described, which is like, just kind of be prouder of yourself. Don't be a wilting daisy about, oh, I can't charge. So that's part of it. But then the other is the possibility piece. The other is like truly understanding that the buyer who is right for you, they actively want to pay more. So if you were to go to, I'm just going to use an extreme example. If you went to like a Comic Con, and you were selling books live, and you were really afraid that somebody wouldn't buy your books. And so you priced them at $6 because you bought your author copies for $5. So you're like, I'm going to make $1. And you're like, I'm going to sell a ton of books. Well, guess what? The kind of people who want to buy books in person and want to meet the author, they're actively put off by your low price. They are not indifferent to your low price. They are put off by it. Because especially somebody like that true artisan buyer wants something of value that connects them to the artist, the person who created it. And if they pay too little, there's a weird thing that happens. There's this associated thing called the Veblen effect, which you can look up. It's Veblen. And it refers to people wanting to pay more for something that they value because then it is more valuable to them. And they're the kind of people who want to support local. They want a direct connection. And if you don't let them support you because your prices are so low, that turns them off too. So understanding that paradigm flip, or that like, guys, $25 is not that much money. It just isn't. Not in 2025. What's everybody's cell phone bill running these days? So like if somebody walks by a book booth somewhere and they like a book and they want to Like 20, I don't feel like I'm ripping anybody off if I charge $20 or $25 for a paperback book. Like, come on.
Yeah, the thing that finally convinced me to raise my print prices was when I was doing an in-person event, and I told one of the browsers what the price was, and she said, "Oh no, you've got to charge more than that."
Yeah.
And I think the other thing is, and I think I'm stealing this from my buddy Nat Connors of Kindle Trends, but I think he's the one who talks about the neighborhood that your book exists in. So for a long time, my ebooks were $4.99. And I started seeing that the other books that were $4.99 were no longer the neighborhood I wanted to live in.
Yeah.
They were books that had not very good covers and they weren't getting very good reviews. And I thought, no, I want my book to be living in the neighborhood of what? Oh, $6.99. That seems more like the neighborhood I want to be living in. And then I think the other thing that this makes me think of is that I always hope that what is driving, well, I'll put it a different way. If you're saying I can't charge more than $2.99 for my book or whatever, it could be because of your assessment of market forces, which, I think we're arguing is maybe skewed. But if you really think your book's only worth $2.99, then that's not artisan. That's maybe stepping back and taking a look at upping your game so you can up your prices as well.
Yeah. Well, so here's another paradigm shifter for you. So this is, I think, something that's important for people to just know, whether they do anything with it or not. We in the self-publishing world act like this that we see in front of us, which is the ebook market that we've been selling to and that we've been taught and all that stuff, is if that is what readership looks like. Like that whale reader in KU is kind of the avatar that a lot of people are really shooting for. That is not a typical reader. Those people are great and they love to read, and I love that people love to read. But if you overlap all of the circles of what we're paying attention to, so when I say the true kind of extreme of rapid release, here's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about Kindle Unlimited, ebook only, rapid fire production. Okay. So you can be in Kindle Unlimited and do beautiful print editions but whatever. But if you're only doing ebooks, then here's what's happening. You are selling only one format. You are selling only on one store, Amazon. You are selling only to one country effectively. So I get that the UK and Australia and Germany, like I get that Amazon distributes to them, but not really, right? Like pathetically, apologetically, so you'll get a few sales, but like most of your sales are the US. So you are attracting the Amazon Kindle Unlimited ebook buyer who, by the nature of the fact that they're paying a subscription, kind of isn't that interested in buying your specific book. It's just one more thing that's coming in. That is a very small slice of the overall worldwide reader population. If you look to the rest of the world, if you look to Wide, you look to Barnes & Noble and Kobo and Apple, and you look to multiple formats and audiobooks and all this, that's what I've found is going out into the world. There's so many more readers out there that nobody is trying to reach, and we're all shooting for that relatively small pool of Amazon Kindle America only. And so it isn't even a scarcity thing. It's like you talk about where do you find the readers? Everywhere. I gave a talk once at a library, and this was 2 authors, but I think it's even more so for readers. And I was just riffing on things that you would be like, well, yeah, of course. Like anybody that I know would be like, why are you boring me with this 101 stuff? And it blew their minds. They did not know that any of this existed. And so if writers who are in the trade don't know, believe me, there's readers who don't know. And I run into it all the time. And I've run into people. One of the coolest things about selling in person is I can do quiet market research just by talking to people. And I've had a bunch of people. Now, this sounds like a judgment. I don't mean it to be so. I don't mean to insult anyone, but I have had people tell me I'm actively not interested in Kindle Unlimited ebooks. They're actively not interested in it. They move away from it. They run when they see it. Now, that's not everybody, but my point is those readers are out there. So like, if you worry about not finding readers, yeah, they're harder to find. That's what makes them so valuable. But believe me, they're out there.
Well, I think a nice way to maybe wrap up our conversation is that not only are some of the things you're talking about with regard to educating our fellow authors, the surprise you had about things that our fellow authors need to be educated about, but I think that maybe the flip side of that is readers are getting more educated and all the things that we're talking, well, many of the things that we're talking about, like the cost of producing a book and the time that goes into it and all those kinds of things, I think we're catering to an audience that understands from an outsider point of view what goes into being an artisan author and stands ready to support the artisan authors out there.
I think so. I think they're the people who go to farmers markets and buy their produce. I think they're the people who buy vinyl. I think those people are definitely out there. And they take great pride in supporting artists. So let them support you.
Yeah. So great. Well, Johnny, I know you have a whole book of more insights on this, so please let everyone know where they can go to find out more about that book, about you, and everything else you do online.
So the key takeaway for this one is the Artisan Author book Kickstarter, and it's running from July 15th through August 14th of 2025, and it's at johnnybtruant.com/artisan. After that, it'll be the book itself. But I'm going to do some what I think are interesting things with that. I don't like online courses, but I loved college. And so I'm thinking like, I kind of want to replicate a college-like experience for the backers who are interested in it. So you can just get the book, but like, I think I want to do like a twice weekly lecture and discussion format for 10 weeks with, all sorts, like I want it to feel like a college. So I'm going to try that because I really like teaching. So I'm eager to see if that goes and if people like it.
That's so cool. Thank you so much. And good luck with the Kickstarter and with the book and its post-Kickstarter phase.
Thank you so much.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Johnny. What's one aspect of being an artisan author that resonates most with you? Just pop on over to this episode on YouTube and leave a comment. And if you got value from this episode and were thinking, I wish I could buy Matty a cup of coffee, you can do that. Scroll to the bottom of any page at theindyauthor.com and click Buy Me a Coffee. Until next time, here's wishing you favorable winds and smooth sailing on your creative voyage.